Namaste, everyone. We continue today in the first chapter of the Ashtavakra Gita, starting with verse 9. You can repeat each line after me. Eko vishuddha bodhoham, eko vishuddha bodhoham, iti nishchaya vanhina, prajvalya jnana gahanam, vita shoka sukhi bhava, Ashtavakra begins by telling King Janaka about the perspective of an enlightened person. Aham, I am ekaha, one, the one and only vishuddha bodha, pure consciousness, atma. As we saw in an earlier video, pure means free from attributes. Pure consciousness has no size, shape, or form. Consciousness has no edge or boundary of any kind. Therefore, it is limitless, infinite. Consciousness is like space, which is all-pervasive. And, like there can only be one all-pervasive space, there can only be one all-pervasive consciousness. Now, consider this. Space is not stuck inside this room. This room actually exists in all-pervasive space. Similarly, consciousness cannot be stuck inside your head, but rather your head exists in all-pervasive consciousness. Just as this room and every other room exists in the very same space, so too my mind, your mind, and every other mind exists in the very same consciousness, the one and only consciousness. Then Ashtavakra introduces a powerful metaphor. He compares the knowledge of your true nature as all-pervasive consciousness to a blazing fire that burns away the darkness of ignorance. Iti nishchaya vanhina, the fire of knowledge, the intense heat of self-realization, prajvalya. It burns away. It completely incinerates ajnana gahanam, the dense forest of ignorance of atma, the ignorance that prevents you from recognizing your true nature as all-pervasive consciousness. Ashtavakra compares this ignorance to a dense forest for a particular reason. You can see through the trees even in a dense forest for a short distance, but not all the way to the other side. Your view is partially obstructed by the trees. In a similar way, ignorance of atma partially obstructs knowledge of your true self. Even though you know that you're a conscious being, ignorance prevents you from knowing the true nature of that consciousness. King Janaka has already burnt away the forest of ignorance that obstructs the direct recognition of one's true nature as Atma. So Ashtavakra concludes, Sukhi bhava, be happy, remain as you are in a state of perfect contentment, a state that is vita shoka, free from suffering, untouched by worldly problems. Now, the next verse needs some introduction. Everything you experience arises in consciousness. You become aware of your thoughts, emotions, and everything you perceive in the world around you when they appear in your mind and get revealed or illumined by the so-called light of consciousness. An enlightened person also experiences thoughts, emotions, and perceptions when they arise in consciousness. But there's a huge difference in how each of you interpret your respective experiences. For example, you might assume that thinking about death or feeling gloomy or feeling physical pain are undesirable experiences, experiences that can threaten your sense of well-being. An enlightened person, on the other hand, knows very well that none of those experiences can actually affect the consciousness that reveals them. Like the sun is not affected by anything it shines upon, so too consciousness is not affected by anything it reveals. For this reason, an enlightened person will never feel threatened by any kind of experience, but instead will remain perfectly peaceful and content in any situation. Ashtavakra explains this in the next verse. Yatra vishwamidam bhati, yatra vishwamidam bhati, kalpitam raju sarpavata, kalpitam raju sarpavata, ananda paramanandaha, ananda paramanandaha, sabodhastvam sukham bhava, sabodhastvam sukham bhava. In the last line, saha bodhaha, that consciousness, pure consciousness, is ananda paramanandaha. You probably know that ananda means bliss and paramananda means supreme bliss. But Ashtavakra is not describing an extraordinarily blissful experience here. He's describing the nature of atma, pure consciousness. And that consciousness has no attributes or qualities, including qualities like being blissful. According to the Sanskrit commentary on this verse, those two words indicate your swabhava, your true nature, which is perfectly full and complete, utterly free from limitations of any kind. In other words, Ananda is who you are. It's not how you feel. Here, Ashtavakra describes consciousness as yatra, the place where idam vishwam, this entire world, everything that you experience, bhati, appears. As we saw before, everything you experience arises in consciousness. Everything you see, hear, taste, smell, or touch is known to you in the form of mental activities called vrittis that arise in consciousness. The problem is when you experience the mental activities that arise due to, say, an automobile accident or due to the loss of a loved one, you might assume that those experiences are undesirable because they threaten your sense of well-being. But according to Ashtavakra, the undesirable or threatening nature of all such experiences is kalpitam. It's projected or imagined, raju sarpavat, like a deadly snake that you falsely imagine when you see a coil of rope lying on the ground in a dark alley. Let me explain. A rope itself is not threatening, but when you wrongly think that it's a deadly snake, then it becomes a source of fear. It threatens you. In a similar way, When you wrongly think that an automobile accident or the loss of a loved one can actually affect the pure consciousness that's your true nature, then those experiences become sources of fear that threaten you. But the fact is, the consciousness revealing those experiences cannot be affected by them, any more than the sun can be affected when it illumines an unpleasant scene. Before we continue, please remember here the difference between pain and suffering. Physical and emotional pain are sensations, whereas suffering is your response to those sensations. Responses like, why me? Why did this happen to me? All human beings, including those who are enlightened, are subject to painful sensations. But those who are enlightened know that physical and emotional pain cannot affect their true nature as pure consciousness. As a result, they know that they are absolutely okay in spite of physical or emotional pain. So they remain completely free from suffering. When you fail to recognize the fact that your true nature as pure consciousness can't be affected by anything, then you become vulnerable to suffering. You suffer because of your ignorance of atma. Specifically, you suffer because of your false assumptions. When you assume that certain experiences are undesirable and threatening. But when all that ignorance is removed, then those experiences will no longer make you suffer. This radical shift in perspective is the result of enlightenment. Since Janaka is already enlightened, Ashtavakra concludes, Tvam, you, King Janaka, you are sahabodha. You are, in essence, that very consciousness in which all experiences arise. And therefore, sukham bhava, be happy, remain at peace. Ashtavakra shows here that whether or not you suffer depends on your personal perspective. If your perspective is based on ignorance of your true nature, then you will be subject to suffering. On the other hand, if you are free from that ignorance, then you will not suffer. Ashtavakra explains this to King Janaka in the next verse. Muktabhimani muktohi, muktabhimani muktohi, baddho baddhabhimanyapi, baddho baddhabhimanyapi, kim vadanti satyeyam, kim vadanti satyeyam, yamat sagatir bhavet, yamat sagatir bhavet. Mukta abhimani is someone who is fully identified with atma, pure consciousness, which is mukta, eternally liberated. Such a person is muktaha hi, liberated indeed, enlightened, because of knowing that no experience can ever threaten their true nature. On the other hand, baddha abhimani is someone who identifies instead with their body and mind, which are forever bound by the laws of nature and are therefore constantly subject to physical and emotional pain. That person is baddha, bound, trapped in a life filled with threatening experiences. What Ashtavakra says here is based on a common saying, a saying that declares, ya matihi, as you think, sa gatihi bhavet. That becomes your life, your destiny. In other words, as you think, so you become. Bondage and liberation depend on how you think. Whether your thinking is based on ignorance of your true nature, or if it's based on the knowledge that you can't be threatened by any experience. Ashtavakra concludes, iyam kim vadanti, this saying, this common idiom, iha satya. It's undeniably true. It's a fact. This saying shows a surprising point of agreement between Advaita Vedanta and modern psychology, in particular with the psychological principles used in cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT. Both Vedanta and CBT say that you suffer because of misinterpreting your experiences. And they both say that correcting such misinterpretations frees you from suffering. Let me explain. Suppose someone experiences the loss of their job. That person might feel a bit depressed about the situation and wrongly conclude, I'm totally useless. I can't do anything. I'll never get hired again. A therapist who practices cognitive behavioral therapy would tell that person to reevaluate their wrong conclusions, to see how they misinterpreted the situation. The therapist would probably point out the fact that even highly competent people sometimes lose their jobs. So, CBT works by addressing wrong conclusions about yourself. Conclusions like, no one loves me, or I'm a terrible person. In a similar way, Vedanta works by addressing wrong conclusions about yourself. Conclusions like, undesirable experiences truly affect me and threaten my well-being. Okay, it's time for our guided contemplation. In our practice of nididhyasana today, we will contemplate on Ashtavakra's teaching that consciousness remains utterly unaffected by anything that you happen to experience. But first, please pause this video right now and practice your favorite meditation technique until your mind becomes sufficiently quiet and focused. Then you can return to this video and listen with your eyes closed. Okay, now we're ready to begin. Suppose you dream about being chased by a wild elephant. In that dream, you run for your life, driven by fear. Of course, you're actually safe in your own bed, sleeping soundly. The elephant in your dream frightens you, because you don't know that it really can't hurt you. Now, suppose while you dreamt about being chased by the elephant, you actually knew that you were dreaming. You were having a lucid dream, like being half awake in the dream. Then you would know that the elephant can't truly harm you. In your dream, you might still run away from the elephant, but you would not feel afraid of being killed. Finally, suppose you were walking in a jungle in India, fully awake, and you encountered a wild elephant. Normally, you would run for your life like in a dream. But suppose you were enlightened. Suppose you already knew what Ashtavakra taught here, that your true nature as pure consciousness can't be affected by anything. Then, as an intelligent person, you would still run away from the elephant, but you would not be driven by the same kind of fear. Let's explore this in contemplation. First, just listen. When a moment of silence comes to an end and the sound of Om arises again, how does that sound affect you? Does anything change? When each moment of silence ends and a sound of Om arises, how does that sound affect you? Do you not remain as unchanging consciousness? When the sound of Om arises, you remain completely unchanged. The sound doesn't affect consciousness at all. See the truth of this statement. When the sound of Om arises, you remain unchanged, unaffected by the sound. See the truth of this statement. Om. Consciousness is unchanging, unaffected. Consciousness is unchanging. You remain unaffected. Om.